It's really a big shift to how you work on story in scripted, what the story on the page is and how you interpret it, how you put it on screen, which is a very different process from how do you find a story in a documentary.
Hello! Welcome to Chopping It Up. I'm Shaw.
I'm Jeff.
And we're just two editors talking shop and chopping it up. Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm surviving. I'm making it work.
Nice.
You know, I was perusing Reddit, just checking out the editor pages to see if there's, I don't know, any good questions we can incorporate into the podcast.
Uh-huh.
And the number one is, how do you get started and how do you get a job? All right. So I thought maybe real quick, how did you get into editing? What'd you do?
From a person that I knew that went to Video Symphony, there was a opening as a night assist on a scripted show. Turned out to be the show Community, and basically that show went on for long enough for me to be able to move from assistant to editor. You know, get friends with a group of people, and hopefully one of them breaks through and brings all of you with them. That's
and
basically
get you a job, right?
And get you a job. Basically, that's about the best I can say. Yeah. What about you?
Basically, I was just sick of being a PA.
Oh,
and a logger. I was like, dude, those are the worst. And then my friend was like a editor / I think she was an editor then. And then she got me in, and then I became like an assistant editor. Yeah. Worked on the show Paranormal State, and then they needed some webisodes.
Awesome.
And did a good job, and then they're like, here, start editing. So that's
nice.
10, 15 paranormal shows later, here I am.
So the moral of the story is make friends and hope to
network.
God network, and hopefully one of them can get you in the door. And then you help somebody else get through the door. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, that's the key, helping other people.
So, Shaw, who do we got on the podcast today?
Today we have Varun Viswanath, and he has edited some great shows here. We got Reservation Dogs, What We Do in the Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
I Am Not Okay With This.
Yep.
Blind Spotting.
Uh-huh.
And Based on a True Story.
And a bunch of other awesome indie movies and shorts that he will tell us about in the upcoming minutes.
He's an ace editor, so he's the man.
He is the man.
He's the man. All right.
Yeah.
Here's the podcast. All right. Welcome to the show. Today we have Varun, who's edited a ton of stuff.
Hello.
First off, I got to say, Res Dogs, amazing show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you guys like it.
What made you want to get into editing, basically? Or did you want to go into editing, or was it starting something else?
Editing, I kind of fell into editing. I come from like a theater production background, like in high school and college. Mm-hmm. And in college, somewhere in college, somebody put a DV cam, recorded the whole play that we did. And I was always a behind the scenes guy. Like, I'm usually the guy with the headset in the control room yelling at people. So anyway, somebody put a camera up there and recorded the whole show. And the next year when we were coming back around, they were like, oh, we have this thing, so maybe we can make a little, clip show out of our show and try and get sponsors from that. So it was kind of at that point in time, it was like, how do we get this off the DV cam? Who has a computer with the right card? It was that time, right? And that was one of my, I build my own PCs and, love to figure out technology. So I kind of just fell into it and said, okay, give me this DV cam and let me figure it out. And
now, was this in India?
This was in Singapore, actually. I went to college in Singapore. I was born and raised in India, but I went to college in Singapore. So yeah, so then I had these skills. And then after we graduated from college, we all went on and did our regular people jobs. But my theater group was kind of itching to do something together again. So they were like, oh, why don't we just pick up cameras and shoot some short films? And then when we started doing that, I was the only guy who knew how to bring footage in and we used Premiere Pro. So it fell on me. And when I first started doing script, that was the first scripted thing I was doing. I just fell in love with it, man. The first time I even downloaded the footage and started putting it, lining up dialogue and lining up inserts and stuff. And it just clicked. And I thought, okay, we've shot the whole day. I'm just going to import the footage and then cut it tomorrow. And I just stayed up all night on my like director friend's dining table, just like cutting the whole thing together, and I didn't even feel time pass. And so that's when I was like, oh shit, I can do this. I felt like I had a natural hook into it.
Yeah.
Kind of an interest that could just like was timeless. Just you really get deep into it, and that's kind of where it really cemented. And I go, okay, editing is going to be one of the things that you do. We made like 8 short films in 4 years, and then flipped it into making a super micro budget indie. And so I would literally like go to work 9 to 6 or whatever, and then
what was your job?
I was working in like the financial sector.
Oh, okay, cool.
So shirt and tie, go to a high-rise building every day kind of thing. So I would like literally like leave from there, come home and edit, because we always had something that was going on. And my roommates were the writer-director that I worked with, and a musician actor who also we worked with. So the 3 of us kind of just did all this stuff together. So it was it started as a hobby. It became the primary thing that I did outside of work, and then eventually when like 2007 2008 hit, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I don't want to be working. I don't see myself working in this like shirt and tie sector for a long time. What really wakes me up in the morning and keeps me up late at night is working on film. So I'm going to apply to film school.
You said you went to AFI for film school?
I did, yeah. I applied to film schools, both in producing and editing, because there aren't like really that many editing programs, specific programs. So I was like, okay, let me hedge my bets. Let me apply for producing things as well. But then AFI accepted my application. I went through an interview and all that, and accepted me. And so I just, sight unseen, had never been to the US before. Just packed up my bags and moved to LA and hoped to make it.
Well, you're an American success story right there. So how was AFI? Did you like it? Did you feel like you learned a lot, or was it?
I really loved it, man.
Cool.
It's a hard program in the sense that it's the conservatory model, where it's like the entire program is structured around you going out and making a film, bringing it back to class, and like every stage you bring it back to the class and talk about it, right? Like the directors, they do their like lookbooks and their treatments and all of that. The producers bring their budgets and their locations, all of that. And for editors, like we bring in our editor's cut, we bring in a director's cut, we bring in everything is brought to a class, and the whole class kind of takes it apart. And you learn. The majority of the learning is through that. So I really enjoyed that aspect of like, okay, you're going to go team up with a director, a producer, a writer, a cinematographer, and all of you make a film. And in my first year, I edited 6 short films, all under 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And in my second year, I did 2 short films or thesis films that were bigger budgets.
Nice.
And so just kind of working through that just gave me the crash course on like, okay, this is how Hollywood film productions are structured. These are all the things that you're going to think about. These are all the relationships you're going to manage. Where I came from, it has a lot more kind of British language and kind of colonial customs, right? And so you had to look. I came to AFI, and it's like you don't say rushes anymore. You say dailies, So it's like even things like that. You just kind of get immersed in. Okay, this is how you do it here. But like, I think the most important thing that I took away from being at AFI was how to talk about film and story and character, and how to give feedback that is useful at the time you're giving the feedback, right? Like, you can't watch a director's cut and say, if I was directing the film, I would have told the actor to do that. It's like, just help me with how to make the film better now. And it's like that contextual, like how do you how best to be useful at a certain point of time, and also how to receive feedback, like how to brush things off that that can be personal. I feel that was the most important thing I took away from that whole experience. So
nice,
because like so much like
that's most of our job.
After you cross a baseline of technical skills of being able to work the Avid or any other editing program, beyond all of that is just like, how do you talk to the people that you work with and get everybody to one result, right? And I feel like that was really great.
I see on Reddit all the time is film school worth it? And in your opinion, film school is worth it? Like,
absolutely. I would say film school was worth it for me for two different reasons, right? Like, one, of course, is all the stuff that I said. Like, I really thought I got a very good baseline. And I also come from, like, I am a school person. Like, I get a lot of confidence from knowing that, okay, I went to a structured place and I learned in a structured way, and that gives me confidence, right? And there are a lot of people I've met who are like, I learned on the streets and that gives me confidence. And that's great too. But for my personality type, like, going to school was something that gave me a lot of confidence. And the second side of that is, as an international student, as somebody who's trying to break into the industry from outside,
Right.
it is a lot easier from an immigration and visa perspective if you've gone to school, because that gives you it gives you an extra year of, on your student visa to work, which helps you make connections of people who can, like, co-sign on your visa application. I mean, it's a lot more complicated, but like, people who can write you recommendations, people can offer you jobs. And also the connections you make at school. Like, if I had one of my teachers write me a recommendation letter for immigration, and so that helps. Like, you just get giving you the opportunity to build a case to get a visa. The school route is a lot more reliable, because if I just showed up here and said, hey, I showed up here on a tourist visa, walked into a company and said, hey, give me a job, they'd be like, who the hell are you? So, and if I said, oh, I cut this short film in Singapore, they're like, I don't care, right? Like, and that's so I think going to school for me, as somebody who came from outside the country, was valuable for that reason.
I've heard so many of the bad stories of it are like, oh, I'm a debt or whatever and all that stuff like that. But it's good to hear people actually like, no, this actually helped. This helped my career. This, like, totally, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this stuff. So it's cool to hear that side too.
I mean, I don't deny the debt. Like, it took me a long time to pay it off. And especially as an international student, like, you don't have access to federal, like, loans that are lower interest, longer term. Like, my loans were like 9%, 10%, and I had to pay them off in 7 years. So it was like, I as soon as I graduated, I was like, in the daytime I was cutting for a YouTube channel, and at nighttime I was assistant editing on a reality show. Like, I was like just double burning the candle on both ends to like make this shit work,
Brutal.
Hey, man. My next question was going to be like, so what was your first job out of film school?
My first job out of film school, I was the second assistant editor on a music documentary. An AFI alum was editing the documentary. He'd already hired one of my classmates to be his assistant.
Gotcha.
Oh, nice.
Okay. And then he was like, I want another one. I was still finishing my thesis film, so he pulled me in, got paid, I think, like $600 a week or something to kind of be a half PA, half assistant editor. So working on that documentary is how I got my union days. And
nice.
And so that lasted for maybe like 3-4 months. And I did that while I was still in, like, finishing up my thesis film, when it was a little light after all the, shooting and stuff.
Okay.
So that was my first paid thing out of school. Yeah. But I wanted to work on TV shows, and nobody would hire me straight to do like scripted TV. And so I got a night assisting job, and I just took that at some point in time, and so that I could get some credibility doing TV assisting, because I mean, we are an apprenticeship based program, like a profession, right? Like, you have, it's very hard for somebody to just like straight come in and be an editor, like, unless you kind of put in your time in lower positions, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to pay my dues by doing the night assisting. And
that
make
was
some extra cash.
For a reality show or for
a reality show? Yeah, it was for Think Factory Media.
And you were just doing like grouping stuff, like multi-grouping and everything. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, learned all my Avid tricks
nice.
from there, man. Learned how to multi-group, did the keyboard maestro, like all of that stuff.
Yeah, Yeah, they can auto group everything now, right? You know that,
I know, right? It's
what? Where
It's
was
so
that?
crazy. I just thought,
Where was
man,
that? Hours of my life just
my fingers were
gone.
so.
Anyway, sorry. Good. Continue.
one of the post supervisors I had crossed paths with went on to do a scripted show, and he was like, I need somebody technical to do this. And I was like, I can do that, because I'd like done a whole bunch of like technical troubleshooting, because it was so crazy. That competition show that I worked on, it was like they still shot on XD cam tapes, and they would get corrupted all the time. And I just like kind of put my head down and try to fix a lot of that stuff. So I got props for that. And because of that, I got a bump to, scripted, which was amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so then once I moved to scripted, that was my first union job was in 2014, even though like I got my union hours in early 2013. And yeah, once I got into the scripted Comedy Central show, I just kind of hunkered down. I say, I really like these editors. I want to keep working with them.
And what show was that?
It was called Review. It was a show.
Oh, yeah, I know that show. Yeah,
3 seasons on Comedy Central.
cool.
Yeah, it was really wonderful, really great show. Not enough people watched it.
No.
I really liked it. Yeah.
And did you kind of stay with that group of people and like move on to other shows, or?
I did. I kind of stayed with that group. I mean, those editors went and did other things. They had a feature or whatever, and I ended up working with a couple of other editors along the way. But I think from the time that I started working with them, I probably worked 60% of my time with these 2 editors over the years. And they, and kept like kind of pushing and saying, hey, I want more to edit. And so, and it happened very gradually. Like it would start with a couple of scenes every episode, to like kind of then getting co-editing credits. So the last 3 seasons of TV that I worked with them, I got multiple co-editing credits.
Nice.
This was on What We Do in the Shadows, I'm Not Okay With This, Trial and Error. Actually, it was 4 seasons of TV, multiple episodes of co-editing credits with them.
Nice.
And
I'm Not Okay With This is a very underrated show, and it sucks that it didn't get a second season.
Oh, thank you, man. I'm glad you liked it.
I remember watching it, and I just liked the tone of it, and I know because it was more realistic and everything, even though it was like a superhero kind of thing. But yeah, I just thought it was really well done, and I was like, oh, this is definitely going to get a second season. Like, this is better than half the shows on Netflix. What are you talking about? And then
no, we did. Yeah, we did get a second season, but COVID killed it. It was renewed, and I was like so excited to be like, okay, we're literally in the same facility doing both shows. And I was like, okay, in the fall we'd start What We Do in the Shadows, go until like April, May, and then in the summer do I'm Not Okay With This, and then come back to Shadows. Like I was like, oh, we could just hop back and forth between these 2 for a while. But then COVID hit, and they weren't able. I think Netflix at some point in time decided they can't pay the actor. They can't pay the actors to bench them anymore.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So, and so after the 1 year expired, after whatever they paid the actors for to bench them, they were like, okay, this is I don't think we're gonna be able to do it. And we're all so bummed, because even Netflix really liked it. Like it's great. Yeah, it was
great. It was a really underrated show. It was really like, I remember because it would like, it kind of just popped up in my feed one time, and it was one of those things where I watched the first episode. I'm like, well, this is cool, and then like 3 hours later, I was like, holy crap, this show is awesome. Like,
oh, I'm glad you liked it, man.
No, it was awesome. Yeah.
My episode was, if you remember much of the show, like there was a Breakfast Club episode where everybody is stuck in stuck in detention.
You can take that language straight to detention. Anyone else? Mother. Okay, fine. Detention for you too, Mr. Barber.
We did like crazy restructures on it, because it was like very linear the way it was written and shot. And then we put it together, and we're like, oh, this is kind of, the director was like, this is kind of too straight. Like there's nothing fun in this. So then like that was my like biggest editorial heavy lifting at the time. Was okay, how do you restructure this episode and write new voiceover?
Was that your first like editor credit? Like where you were by yourself?
I had two before that.
Okay.
But I mean, the crew that I worked with, we all, even the regular episodes, like they were always co-edits. Like everybody would, as the dailies came in, we just, whoever was free would put your initials on the scene bin and do a first pass of the scene. Editors, assists, whoever it is, and then somebody would put it all together as a first assembly, and then all four of us would come and watch it together and split up the notes and say, okay, you take act 1, you take act 2, you take act 3. So that's kind of how they built their mentorship into it.
Oh, wow.
I like edit rooms that are like that, where it's more collaborative instead of like, your episode's this, because then nobody knows what's going on between other episodes and stuff. Yeah.
It was really great to learn like that, like not, and so as I started working with them more, like they would give me more to do during that phase,
Nice.
And it was really great to like get notes from a room of other editors, and not just be like, okay, you just put together an editor's cut and let's see what the director says. There was always a couple of extra stages of watching it within the team before it went out, and sharing the work, which was really wonderful. So
and that probably helped you like learn how to talk as an editor, because you have to kind of defend stuff between everybody, kind of thing, or whatever, and stuff like that.
There's definitely that, and it was, we would split up directors' days as well. Like if it was 2 directors' days, the director would spend 1 day with an editor, 1 day with an assistant editor. I always ended up working on deceptively VFX heavy shows, so I kind of default became the VFX editor, and the VFX producer who would like deal with the VFX company. So then I had a way more kind of back and forth with the showrunners, with the creators of the show. So I was able to like build those relationships more.
That show was super heavy on VFX stuff. Like, I mean, I know there were VFX, but it didn't seem as.
I'm not okay with this. Was okay actually. Weirdly, for it's compared to the average, like that is a pretty small show in the sense like it's not that many characters, not that many episodes. But it was made by the same team that makes Stranger Things, and it was better staffed than What We Do in the Shadows. We had a full VFX team. There was an in-house VFX artist, an in-house VFX producer, and there were like a post-producer and an AP coordinator, everything. And we were like, this is amazing. Like we just come up with What We Do in the Shadows, which is like 100 VFX shots per episode, which was just like 2 editors, 2 assists, right? And that's it. And and where I was the VFX editor, I was the VFX producer.
I thought you were talking about. Okay, gotcha.
So I was not only a rising assistant editor who has editing credits, I also was all these other things. I'm not okay with this. I didn't have to do too much VFX work, but on What We Do in the Shadows, man, like all of that VFX, especially the first 2 seasons. I still even remember frame numbers. It's that crazy how deep I was in VFX producing of those first.
You worked on corporate here? That's
I did, awesome. Yeah. I worked on the pilot. Yeah, I did. I worked on 3 pilots, which all got picked up. One was corporate. The other one was Southside, which was on Comedy Central, but now it's now on Max.
Yeah.
And I worked on What We Do in the Shadows, the pilot of What We Do in the Shadows, but that's the only show that I was available to go and work on the series. Yes.
Wait. All right. One more quick question. So, is there anything like I don't know, like a tip or two, like when you started doing scripted?
Yeah.
That like really, like now looking back, you're like, oh, I wish I would have known this or done this, or just something to like when you're making that transition that took you a while to learn or anything. I don't know. Or is it just a process that you got to go through?
Yeah, I think it is a process that you have to go through. But I'd say that if somebody's making a shift into scripted and you haven't worked on, if you haven't cut your own like short films or anything, narrative short films before that, like it's really a big shift to like how you work on story in scripted versus how you work on story, like, and what, because in unscripted, like, you have story editors who are bringing stuff to you. Yes, you have to do a lot as an editor as well, but it's just the way that it's thought about, the way it's talked about, and who's in charge of it is kind of different.
Right.
And so that's something that, since I had worked on, indie features before, I had a little bit easier transition. I feel like I've seen some other assistant editors who come from unscripted into scripted and end up, kind of focusing a lot on the technical aspect of it, which of course takes a while. But the big learning is okay, now you get to be a different type of influence on story.
Gotcha.
And you get to have your own kind of, perspective on what the story on the page is and how you interpret it, how you put it on, how you put it on screen, which is a very different process from like the documentary, how do you find a story in a documentary versus how do you find the story and tone in a narrative film.
Right.
So that's one thing that I think is something to kind of either read up about or talk to others about, like, how do you find your place in this process versus what your place was in an unscripted process. Yeah, it's that's the big thing, right? And then of course, like, knowing when you can, like, when and how you can kind of put your hand up or like give feedback or give notes, right? And I think that as an assistant editor in unscripted, like, you can be in more situations where you're in a room full of people watching something, and there's a showrunner, there's a writer, there's maybe an actor who's also an EP, and the editors, everybody's there. Like, that's not the place where you put up your hat,
Right.
Yeah.
Because you work for the editor and you're there because the editor is allowing you to be there as an assistant editor.
Right.
So, like, just make sure that you're mindful of that hierarchy a little bit, just to not because I think hierarchies are great, but it's more of like, that's what we have right now as a system. So if you want to work that system and get good results for you out of that system, you're gonna have to learn.
Yeah. I remember I went from comedy to drama, like, as an assistant, and I was like, you were like, everybody in comedy, like, best idea wins, everybody kind of talks up about it or whatever. Drama is not that way. And so, like, in dramas, the assistant's in the room with the editor while they're with the director, so they can take notes and do things and everything. So it's more almost like akin to like a movie or something.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, there was a scene that was like, I was like, man, this just feels like too far in the front. You should move it to the back. And I said something, and just the look of just disdain I got. I was like, okay, never mind. All right, I will just shut the hell up then.
I mean, dramas tend to be a little bit more like that, for sure.
Yeah,
and I
definitely.
I mean, I wouldn't claim to know all the reasons why it is, but I think the role of a director is something that only exists in narrative and in TV narrative film, but doesn't quite exist in the unscripted reality world that as we know it. So there's this like an additional layer of, depending on the director's personality, they might be very precious about them, and they might be like,
right,
who are you to give me feedback? I don't know you, right? And or they could be very hierarchical and be like, you're who are you? You're just an assistant. Why do I care? Right? So I'm not saying any of those things are right.
By the way, the scene got moved to where I told him. By the way, the scene got moved to where I told him to put it. So I just want to. But that's besides.
Good notes win, right?
Well, so that's a good question. So when can you actually like move things like that, right? As an editor, you got to wait till after the first pass.
In comedies, I think I've taken more of a license with that. Like and editors, unless I feel like something is like really not working with where a scene is, I won't move it. Or something is really not working with a line that like I won't cut it out, but I will have all those notes to pitch to the director. Out when we talk about the editor's cut and what notes we want to do and what we want to do for the director's cut, I would like immediately. It's like, hey, I'd restructured this scene just as an experiment. What do you think of this? I think these lines should come before and this, and then let's cut out this thing in the middle. I think that scene would be better. Or like,
Gotcha.
I think this scene would work better a different place in the sequence. If there's an A story and a B story that you're tracking, like how do you intercut them?
Right.
Or if there are two scenes that are happening separately, you're like, oh, if I think if you intercut them, they would be more emotionally like.
Gotcha.
So those are things that I would hold as pitches after the director has seen it in the way that it's scripted.
And because it usually comes out as like, man, this scene's really boring. And you're like, well, if we cut these two scenes together, I think it might work.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it goes. Yeah. So you assisted on what we do in the shadows, and then you moved up there. And so editing on that show, how much of it is improv and how much of it is actually scripted?
I would say of what makes it into the final, I would say maybe 10% is complete improv. Like, didn't even have a word of that on the screen, on the page. But beyond that, I would say that at least 30 to 40% of the lines are not exactly how they were scripted.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
So they will be scripted in a certain way, but then Matt Berry just like, he takes the spirit of what it is, but then makes it his own. And, he definitely like makes shit up all the time. Closely followed by Nadja, very closely followed by Nandor. Like they're just like making lines their own and kind of shifting the cadence of how they would say it, adding more details. That kind of improv is quite common. But like the random like end of the scene, they're still trailing off and just making random stuff. Like that's maybe 10% of it is
that's
that
it.
makes it in. No, that 10% of it makes it into the show, right? They do that all the time,
Right.
Yeah, but maybe 10% of it makes it into the show. Yeah.
With a show like that, that's kind of like, for the lack of a better term, just like docu-style, like Modern Family, Office kind of thing. Basically, you get the editors cut together, and then you're like, this scene needs to get cut down, and then you would kind of shoot the talking heads or whatever, or does that happen? Or
the talking heads are all shot already. I mean, of course, for the pilot, they just got a whole bunch of extra stuff just to be like, we don't know what's going to cut together to be funny. And it was crazy. Like it was in the pilot, there was this whole stretch of Kayvan, who plays Nandor, who just went on about this horse painting, right? It was just random. He just made that shit up on the spot. And he's like, this is my horse, John. And it was so ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. And we put it in, and then Nandor and his horse, John, became a whole fucking storyline through the show, right? It was amazing. It's amazing how that shit comes together.
John was my closest companion. He would accompany me everywhere. On the battlefield, as I relentlessly slaughtered thousands of enemies. And also, he would be there when I felt a little sad.
We do write a reasonable amount of ADR that goes as voiceover to like, to bridge through scenes.
Gotcha.
Okay. So if we can hook something in as much as possible, we try to hook into something that's already shot as a talking head, and then modify what's said as voiceover over the scene. But if we really need a talking head, we're like, this is really missing, and we need to get it. And if they're still in production, we just like say, hey, can you guys shoot this for us? Which happened and really made the difference in season 1. Was it 105? The Baron's night out, where they all take the Baron out, and it's the one with the drug blood and all of that. In season 1. That was really lacking talking heads, and when we put the editor's cut together, we're like, oh man, this is really missing that cadence of like, let's get more talking heads from our crew while they're on their night out. So we put the request into the to production, and they just went and shot a whole bunch of just talking heads. It's like, okay, you guys go wild.
Gotcha.
this is where we are the night, say what you want to say, right? So they kind of improv their way through a bunch of talking heads. And so a lot of the thing that became a meme with Nandor with a traffic cone on his head saying I drag drug blood and I'm a wizard was a completely improv talking head that we requested from Editorial, being like, you guys got to give us some talking heads here to bridge all these different moments.
We drank the blood of some people, but the people were on drugs. And now I'm a wizard.
The Varun is very actually great man.
I drank the drug blood. Yes, I drank some drug blood.
It is one of the most recognizable memes from the show, which is
It's great.
Yeah.
And you got nominated for an Ace Award for What We Do in the Shadows, right? Is that
right? Yeah. In
that
season,
opened doors, right? Is that opened?
I hadn't found out about that for a while, but like I think what We Do the Shadow season 2 got an Emmy nomination for best comedy. And that's when I think people were like, "Oh, we've got to take people who worked on the show seriously," you know.
Nice.
And I think that's what helped, because every time before that, anywhere that I put my hand up and say, "Hey, agent person, would you be interested in representing me?" Or like I would reach back out to people I had worked on a pilot with, like the people who did corporate, the people who did Southside. When they were going to series, like I would put my hand up and say, "Hey, listen, like I cut all the stuff on the pilot.
Right.
I'd love to put my name in the hat when you hire for editors for the season. I know my editors are coming back, but I would love to come back." I never got traction from that stuff before. But I really think the turning point was Shadows getting us an Emmy nomination in season 2 as best comedy, and then I got Blind Spotting off of that, and then we heard about the Eddie nomination.
Oh, okay. So it's the Emmy.
Okay.
The Emmy nom was a big thing.
Yeah, the Emmy nomination for the show. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
as best comedy, and
Right.
then we got the Eddie nomination, and that was such a family affair. It was the Jackie Daytona episode, if you guys remember that.
Yep.
And Yana, who is one of the editors that I worked with, who's now a co-exec on the show and directs like half the season. So she was making her transition into directing. So she directed that episode, and Dane, the other editor I worked with, and me, we co-edited that episode. So it was like all in the family.
Nice.
Nice.
And so we got an Eddie nomination.
Reservation Dogs hasn't gotten nominated, right?
Man,
what is going on? Like, seriously.
Well, let's hope we change that with season 3, right? So thank you for thank you for getting my name out there a little bit more through what you guys are doing.
Well, I thought season 2 was like, how is this not nominated too? It's like,
I know, man. I mean, we have very mixed feelings about it, right? On the one hand, like every major publication that had a best of the year list, like we were on like 70% of them as the top show, and no Emmy nominations, right? And it's kind of it's very hard to like figure that out and be like, if all the critics like it, like why how does it not translate? I'm not saying we should win. At least we should get nominated.
Yeah,
right?
you should definitely get nominated. Yeah. It's like a comedy, but then like afterwards you'll be thinking, and it's just like, oh wow, that was amazing. You know what I mean? It's like this weird phenomenon.
Thank you, man.
Especially like
show.
up the
It's a great
season,
show.
and then you're just like, holy crap! Like that's an interesting, like when they go build like the roofs or something, right? Like I know you added that. It's really touching on a lot of things. So I think I don't know, it takes a while to hit, I think, for some people to really like, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
feel it. You know what I mean?
I feel you. Yeah, it is that, and so much of it comes from what our showrunner Sterling describes as, this is just the way natives talk, and this is just the way that our communities pass on their knowledge, and nobody takes themselves too seriously. And so the comedy comes in just how they are, and not like, set up punchline,
Yeah.
And so that's been such a great experience for me, just to witness that, and then be like, okay, how do you whittle this down to keep it in that tone of, we're just talking, but there's there's both comedy and drama and like life lessons and kind of disconnect between people. All of that just happens within this regular conversational pace.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and then that's something that I really like. Conversational pace and conversational rhythm is something that I really have a lot of opinions about when it comes to editing. And I really like do, I take a lot of care in how all of that stuff comes together. And so that fit right in for me to be like, okay, how do you figure out what's the rhythm of this?
Right.
Like what deserves to be on screen, on camera, what can be off camera. Like I spend way too much time thinking.
It works though. It's a great show. Like,
Thank
I
you,
mean, yeah.
I feel like it hits you on a weird subconscious level almost too, which I can't say for a lot of shows.
Oh, I'm so glad that it worked for you guys.
Yeah. It's just like, but I'm trying to think of most shows. Most shows don't really do that. Like, what's happening
Yeah.
immediately. And I feel like this show, you don't understand that till like later on and you're thinking about it, which is interesting. I don't know if that's like intentional or that's just how it kind of.
It is a little intentional, actually. Like it is. And I think we work reasonably hard to find where on the spectrum you want to be open-ended about conversation, right? Like there isn't, like, we definitely make sure that you're not closing every loop. And like the thing that we try to stay away from the most is kind of patriarchal, hierarchical kind of it's like, you have to listen to me. I am older than you. I am your parent. You have to this, right?
Right.
And we try to stay as far away from that as possible because that is representative of the community as well. Like that's kind of how, that's what Sterling and his crew, like that's what they experienced growing up. And so we try to stay away from that. So there's a lot of, almost all of these scenes, like that, the roofing scene, the scene between him and his friend's dad.
So you're gonna grow up and be a man. And a man isn't someone who walks around and makes mistakes in hopes that they're gonna do better. That's what a shit ass does.
Yeah.
That was like 4 times as long. Because there's just a lot, like he's very verbose in what he needs to say, all the things he needs to get out. And I feel like we do this a lot in the show where those kind of scenes are overwritten. And they close a lot of loops. But the purpose it serves is that it tells the actors what the goal is of the scene. So they're able to like express all of those things. But then in editing, like we really pare it back down and find a way for it to be open-ended, where nobody's saying like, I am your father, you do this.
Right.
It is like, this is my life experience and this is what I learned.
Yeah.
And leave it there. Right. And then kind of leave both the people in the scene kind of, without complete closure of what's happening there. And the audience, because then you lets you think about like, oh, what did that mean? Is, I really enjoy, like, we do so much of that. Like I've had so many of those like life advice scenes that are overwritten on the page. The actors just like give all those lines that are like, that's redundant, that's too prescriptive, let's close that loop. And by season 3, like I was cutting this stuff down without anybody without asking for permission.
Right.
I'd just be like, I'm going to take this whole thing out. Or like, even in the Dear Lady episode on season 3, if you watch the Dear Lady episode, there's so much of her, like in all her conversations with Bear, like she really spells a lot of things out, be like, I've seen true evil people are like this, good people are like this, you have to do this way. And I was like, let's just take all of that stuff out. Let's leave her as mysterious as possible, because that's where like her power comes from, her being mysterious.
Right.
And let's be like, the less you know about her,
the better.
And the less you know about her by her own words, the better.
Did you kill somebody at that house?
I killed a human wolf.
What's your favorite episode of Res Dogs, just in general, that you've edited?
Oh man, Res Dogs, it's hard to pick, but I would still say Uncle Brownie season that's 103 was my favorite to cut. Like it was my absolute favorite to cut. It just has like a very fast clip of just just ping ponging back and forth with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like we had like always 4 to 5 to 8 people in any scene, and it would always just like wrap it back and forth, right? And really loved the clash of the generations where each person started to dismiss the other generation, but you still hang in there and try to talk.
Why don't you just get your weed card? It's legal now.
Because I ain't no fool. I ain't smoking no government-sanctioned weed. GMO nightmare. Plus, I don't like the new weed. I like this old shit.
I really love that aspect of it. And Uncle Brownie, man, like it's just one of my favorite TV characters of all time. And I feel so fortunate to have played a small part in like bringing Uncle Brownie to TV.
Nice.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was my most challenging episode to cut. Like I think 106, which is the hunting episode, was very challenging to cut.
That's a great episode. Yeah.
209, the one at the prison, was very challenging to cut. At 303, Dear Lady was extraordinarily challenging to cut. So all of those were more challenging, but like what I enjoyed the most was Uncle Brownie.
Nice. Do you have an episode that you're kind of most proud of, I guess, when you like, if you watch it, you're like, damn, that was pretty good. Like,
the one that I'm most proud of is Dear Lady 303.
Because
which
of
is
the
the one
journey
with the
to get there kind of thing.
Yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
that was a huge. I actually this fall term, my first class at AFI that I was teaching, I used that episode as to talk about rewriting and editing, because it was a page 1 restructure, right from the director's cut. Like the way it was scripted was like a big chunk of flashback and a big chunk of present day and a big chunk of flashback, and a big chunk of present. Like that's how it was scripted. Once I put all of that stuff together, like I knew at that point, I was like, okay, we're gonna have to like chop this up and restructure stuff around.
Right.
But then I presented to the director and I said, okay, this is all the scenes I think work by themselves, but then we could do a lot differently to like intercut them. And so from I basically screened the editor's cut and then the final air, and it's a night and day difference in the structure of the show. So we did a lot of rewriting. We combined a lot of scenes of the flashback. We moved them around. We did basically unshackled from like the linearity of flashbacks, how they were written. And music was a huge deal too. Like all the stuff that was initially scripted, there was few like needle drops that were scripted that eventually ended up being changed entirely. So it was quite a process to like find the final like kind of narrative structure of that episode. So I'm very proud of how much we were able to do.
Jeff, you have a last question? Let this guy get out of here.
I mean, no, but you got to get out of here. So, but thanks for.
No, please. I mean, I'm happy to do another 5 minutes if that helps.
Last question. Do you have any recommendations? Any shows? You can plug your own show. There you go.
I mean, please watch Reservation Dogs for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Watch Reservation Dogs, and if you're a TV Academy voters, please vote for us. Or Ace Eddie voters, please vote for us. I mean, shows that I really enjoyed. I mean, The Bear was totally spectacular. I'm a sucker for sci-fi, and I recently went through a full rewatch of The Expanse. I don't know if you guys have watched The Expanse.
I never watched it. Yeah, I never watched it, but people keep telling me it's awesome.
Yeah,
you're watching that when we're on Ultimate Beastmaster.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it was. Yeah, it was. That was season 1. Yeah.
You're like,
it is a little soapier than
it's a little
Battlestar Galactica type of shows, but it is in that same vein.
Oh, it's soapier than Battlestar?
Slightly soapier, slightly, right?
Okay.
But it's not too much to turn you off in any way. But it is just the world building of like how would the power dynamics be in this type of situation? Because they put a lot of work and thought and care into like space travel and the physics of like when two different ships fight, how would they do it? Like, and it's I really enjoyed all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's cool. If you think of any more sci-fi shows, let us know. We're pretty big sci-fi.
Yeah,
we're big into any sci-fi shows.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, all right, man. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Man. And if you need anything else and you missed something else, I'm happy to come back on and
awesome.
We'll have you do some ADR later. All right, sweet. Thanks,
Take care, man. All right, bye.